David Cameron has announced he has no intention of serving a third term as Prime Minister. Speaking to the BBC, Mr Cameron said that if re-elected in May, he would serve a full second term and then leave Downing Street. He said the Conservative Party could benefit from a fresh pair of eyes. And he tipped Theresa May, George Osborne and Boris Johnson as possible future Tory leaders. The Prime Minister gave an exclusive and wide-ranging interview to our Deputy Political Editor, James Landale.
Go on, back and face, Chad.
Saturday morning in the Cotswolds and Chadlington under-9s are taking on Croughton Colts.
Go on, Elwyn, get in the middle. Come on, Chad, back and face.
And on the touchline,
go on, Elwyn.
A rather enthusiastic dad.
Oh, great save.
But while his son's team is looking to score goals, David Cameron's hoping to win at the polls. He told me he wants to stay on for a full second half.
I'm putting myself forward for the full 5 years. I feel fit enough and healthy enough to do the job. I've got a real passion for it. I'm really keen to win, and if I fall short, I will be very disappointed.
Just a short drive away through the rolling Oxfordshire hills lies the Camerons' constituency home. Here, he's the family's chief cook.
Hi, James.
Brilliant. Hi. Thank you very much indeed.
Right,
but for how long will he be the nation's chief minister? Most prime ministers won't speculate about their future, but in a striking admission that will shape the election campaign, he told me and the country that he had a sell-by date.
Would you go for a third term?
No, I think, I'm standing for a full second term. I'm not saying all prime ministers necessarily definitely go mad, or even go mad at the same rate. But I think, I feel I've got more to bring to this job. I think the job is half done. The economy's turned around, the deficit's half down. I want to finish the job.
And he kicked off what could be 5 years of speculation about who might take the job on from him.
There definitely comes a time where a fresh pair of eyes and fresh leadership would be good. And the Conservative Party has got some great people coming up. The Theresa Mays and the George Osbornes and the Boris Johnsons and there's plenty of talent there. I'm surrounded by very good people.
The full 5 years, but no third term.
The third term is not something I'm contemplating. Terms are like shredded wheat. 2 are wonderful, 3 might just be too many.
This is an astonishing thing for a Prime Minister to say just before an election. Not only starting a lengthy leadership contest, but also telling voters, back me now and see the back of me in 5 years. It's a big gamble. Of course, he still has to win a second term first by convincing voters that despite his privileged background, he understands their lives.
How much has being posh held you back politically?
Oh, the whole posh question. Well, it hasn't stopped me becoming Prime Minister.
It makes it easier, though, for your opponents to say the Tories the party of the rich, doesn't it?
It probably does, because, they quite like making attacks based on sort of class and background and things like that. I think that's completely out of date. I think it switches people off. I'm a sort of country boy at heart.
For some peace away from Westminster, he returns most weekends to the place his family call home.
London was their home, and they're at school in London, but because we live in number 10, which one of my children calls the pretend home, it's very important that they feel very rooted and grounded here. Hi. Morning, Martin. Hi. Morning, everyone. All well?
Weekends are for catching up with constituents and shopping at the butcher's.
I like the thighs because they're very juicy.
A butcher that's popular among what's become known as the Chipping Norton set of local celebrities.
So is David your most famous customer?
No, certainly not. There are plenty around here. Mr Clarkson, I expect, pops in from time to time, doesn't he?
Great.
Thanks very much. Bye, Chris. See you later.
Cheers.
And speaking of the Prime Minister's friend and neighbour, even the children are lobbying their dad.
Nancy has threatened to go on hunger strike unless Jeremy Clarkson is restored. So I've told her this is not necessarily a useful intervention. It's not exactly Gandhi, so we had a discussion about this morning.
And with all this going on at home, it falls to his wife, Samantha, to try to keep him sane in the weeks ahead.
Plenty, it looks good. He's definitely, in my mind, the best man for the job.
And what's your role in keeping David grounded during this campaign?
Oh, well, I hope that me and the family help him, me and the children help him to sort of keep things in perspective, keep him grounded, help him to sort of pace himself over the next 8 weeks.
Sanity check, that's what it's about. Definitely.
I hope.
Sorry, Nancy's hunger strike this morning lasted approximately...
Yeah, how is the hunger strike going? Just remind us.
Family time's precious for any Prime Minister, but what we know now is that if he doesn't get more time to spend with his family in a few weeks, he'll certainly get it in 5 years' time. James Landell, BBC News, the Cotswolds.
Well, Mr Cameron's decision not to stand for a third term, if he's re-elected, has put the issue of who will succeed him firmly on the agenda. So why did the Prime Minister make his announcement now? A slip of the tongue? A deliberate political move? Or simply an honest answer to a question? Our political correspondent John Pienaar has this assessment, which contains some flash photography.
Was this as good as it gets? David Cameron had won, just, but the job was his. It was a dream come true and you could see it. Now he's shocked just about everyone and announced that if he gets back in, it'll be for the last time. This could backfire, so why say it? And why now? Keen for more family time? Maybe, but being PM demands a sense of mission which can become obsessive, and that can be a turn-off, as Mr Cameron's great heroine famously showed.
Prime Minister, is this going to be your last election?
I would hope not. I would hope not. This is only the third term we're asking for. Yes, I hope to go on and on.
But now the game's on. Pick a Tory, any Tory. Theresa May, tough on immigration, tough on crime. The new Iron Lady is popular with grassroots Tories and fancies her chances, whatever she says publicly. George Osborne, Chancellor and Master Strategist. He'd like the top job, maybe more than he lets on, though he denies it's an obsession. And don't forget Boris Johnson, as if you could. The Tory Mayor of London, the blonde bombshell, has made it his mission to reach the voters others can't, including UKIP defectors. Of course he wants to play lead, but his friends swear he's loyal.
David Cameron is going to be serving for another 5 years until 2020 as our Prime Minister and embedding the very considerable economic recovery and progress that we're seeing.
Another former Prime Minister had to call time on his leadership before he wanted to.
I'm not going to set a precise date now. I don't think that's right. I will do that at a future date, and I'll do it in the interests of the country.
Tony Blair hoped promising to go would buy him time and space. It didn't. In here, Team Cameron will be hoping that the queue of ambitious colleagues wanting his job stays orderly, and that's asking a lot. Everyone on his list, and one or two others, will be watching each other like hawks and cultivating the Tory rank and file. Anything they say will be seen through the lens of a coming leadership contest. It could all be a distraction at best, and at worst, it could look like a chaotic bun fight for the top job. At Westminster, Tory MPs are adjusting to the news.
It's never a mistake to be honest with the electorate. He has set himself forward for this election, said to the British people what he will do, and he has shown he doesn't want to cling on to power. So it's not only honest, it's also right.
As news of David Cameron's prime ministerial timetable sank in, Labour had its attack line ready.
The Conservative Party are taking the people of Britain for granted. With typical arrogance, David Cameron is now presuming a third election victory before a single vote has been cast in the coming general election.
The PM insists he'd serve a full second term. If the Tories lose, it's hard to see him staying on. If he wins, the guessing game begins. And some senior Tories reckon he may choose to go after a Euro referendum around 2017. His chapter in history written. Speculation, obviously, but David Cameron started it. John Pienaar, BBC News.
Well, let's talk to our Deputy Political Editor, James Landell, who's in Downing Street. So, James, why do you think the Prime Minister chose to make this announcement to you now?
Well, Fiona, on a sort of straightforward and rather prosaic level, I asked the question and he happened to answer it. Occasionally that does happen with politicians. And at no stage did anybody from Downing Street sort of suggest to me, look, this might be a profitable line of questioning. I think the point the Prime Minister was trying to get across is that he wants to, if he's re-elected, serve a full 5-year term. I think he wanted to kind of quash this idea that has been out there that he might stand down early sometime after an EU referendum in 2017. But the problem with being specific about saying a full 5-year term that he wants to serve is that prompts the question, what happens next? I asked it and he chose to answer it.
And when he says he wants to serve a full 5-year term, that, of course, isn't actually going to be possible.
Well, that's just one of the problems with this. There's an uncertainty here. Could he actually just resign on the day the election was called? Would he not actually have to stand down a little bit earlier to allow the Conservatives to elect a replacement? Or would he actually fight the election and then stand down afterwards? Downing Street says, when we ask this question, says, look, he will stand for the full 5-year term. He means what he says. 10 years would be long enough. They don't, however, rule out the Prime Minister leading the Conservatives into the election in 2020. But as to all the details, they say, look, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. You've got that debate. You've also got the debate about the leadership contest, which has now begun for what could potentially be a 5-year leadership contest. I've been speaking to Conservative MPs in the House of Commons this evening. Some were saying, look, this is fine. This is the Prime Minister just being honest and clearing the air. Others were saying, hang on a minute, this is just a massive distraction, a debate about his future when they should be focusing on the election. And other MPs were saying, look, the Prime Minister shouldn't really be telling us how we may or may not vote for his successor in 5 years' time. Bottom line is this: the Prime Minister has opened a debate about a time when he no longer lives in there, and I think that's quite a risky thing to do this close to an election.
Okay, James Landale, thank you very much.